Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing something with you that I get asked all the time, and that is, how do I retain length? How do I get my hair to grow? How do I go from damaged shoulder length to mid-back length? I'm going to be sharing with you some tips that have helped me over the years, tips that I've implemented and still use to this day. Disclaimer, let me just put this out there first and foremost. So these tips are all based on great quality products that actually work for your hair, and you're using it in the correct intention. So you're using it in the correct way it's supposed to be used. Having said that, if you're using products that work for your hair and you're implementing these tips, you're gonna retain length no matter what. So tip number one would be washing and deep conditioning on a weekly basis. I think weekly washing and deep conditioning is sufficient. Using a sulfate-free shampoo to lift the dirt and product buildup off of the scalp. The last thing you want is to have anything coating your scalp and your follicles to inhibit growth. Your scalp is your foundation. So always remember that. Start off with a clean scalp, clean slate, and then you move into your deep conditioning sessions, which is vital. Deep conditioning really helps to repair the hair from the inside out. It gives a ton of benefits. It improves elasticity, strength, moisture, and I always recommend using heat when you deep condition, whether it be a hooded dryer, steamer, heat cap, whatever works for you and your lifestyle. But using heat to lift your cuticles, for 25 to 30 minutes, I think is sufficient. Or even if you deep condition overnight, whatever works for you and whatever that looks like in your regimen, do it. Deep conditioning is number one. Your hair will drastically improve. Your hair will say thank you, and your ends need it the most, because old hair or long hair is old hair, and old hair needs care. We have less cuticle layers as our hair grows longer. It's really important to replenish moisture loss and strength into the hair, and deep conditioning phase is exactly where you want to do that. So keep that in mind. Deep condition weekly, shampoo weekly, and you'll see a huge difference in the health, which will then lead to longer lengths. All right, tip number two, moisturizing and sealing. If you're not deep conditioning on a weekly basis, if you moisturize at least, a couple times out of the week or even daily, you'll see a huge difference in your ends. And as I mentioned before, longer hair is older hair, and your ends are old. Less cuticle layers, they're more porous, easy to dry out, and dry hair leads to breakage. Moisturizing and sealing on a daily, if not every couple of days, is ideal. So first and foremost, you want to find a moisturizer that works for your hair. And when looking at the ingredients, you want to make sure that water is the first ingredient. Otherwise, it's not going to moisturize your hair. And using oils is not the way to go. Oils are hydrophobic. They repel water, so it's best to use it after you've moisturized to really lock in the moisture, which will prevent it from evaporating. So using a great moisturizer with water as the first ingredient, and then moisturizing and sealing in sections. As you guys know, I always stress doing everything in sections, that way no area is neglected. Really work on your nape area and in the crown area, because these areas tend to get neglected. I find that we always reach for our sides, but the middle suffers, and it's really important to tackle those areas that are weaker and not easily accessible. So it's best to just work in sections, that way you get everything covered and you're not going to get a setback. So moisturizing and sealing on a consistent basis really ensures that the hair is absorbing moisture, it's retaining that moisture, and obviously that's going to lead to longer lengths because you're eliminating dryness, and dryness equals breakage. But moisturize and seal on a consistent basis and you'll notice a difference. Okay, so the next tip is protective styling, and protective styling is probably one of my favorites. So when it comes to black hair care, black hair is very fragile, and so are our ends. And as I mentioned before, the longer your hair gets, the older your ends are, the less cuticle layers you have, which means your ends can easily dry out, and that can lead to breakage. So it's important to keep your ends contained, tucked away from the outside elements, like harsh weather, harsh fabrics, etc. So clipping your hair up, having it off of your shoulders, and brushing against rough fabrics and being exposed to the air is so important, especially if you have a goal in mind and you want to reach from shoulder length to like APL, or APL to bra strap length, etc. So some short-term protective styles that you can implement would be bunning, clipping your hair up. I know that's what I used to do in the beginning. My hair wasn't really long enough for a bun, so I would just clip it up with a regular claw clip from the dollar store or Walmart, and that was it. Wigs are a good protective style, like half wigs and full head wigs, because you can still access your hair, you can still be consistent with your weekly weekly routine and your hair is still getting the benefits. So look into wigs if that's something that you are open to. I used to wear wigs in the beginning. I would wear lace front wigs and I would baggy my ends under my wigs, but those were custom wigs. I also wore half wigs if I don't want to do my hair and I have somewhere to go. I can easily style up the front and then have the wig in the back, and that preserves my ends. Look into protective styling, see what works for you. Buns are my favorite, I love, and it really helps to lock in moisture, keep my ends moist, which will lead to longer lengths. Alright, so my next tip would be covering your hair at night. So I typically like to moisturize and seal at night, and then I cover my hair with a satin scarf and bonnet, and I find that when I wake up in the morning, my hair is really conditioned. It feels moisturized, it feels soft. It protects your hair from harsh rubbing. It really helps to lock in the moisture to help the products really penetrate as you sleep. So it's really beneficial. Also keep in mind that covering your hair with a satin scarf or bonnet really helps to keep your hairline intact. Your edges are not rubbed out by the cotton pillowcases or your cotton sheath. So it's just overall protection for your hair that you really want to invest in. So really look into protecting your hair on a nightly basis and you'll notice a huge difference in length retention over time. I know trimming may seem counterproductive, like why am I going to trim my hair if I want to get longer hair? I would say trimming maybe 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch every 3 to 4 months is sufficient. I don't think that's too drastic, but it all depends on how you deal with your hair and how your hair regimen is and the health and quality of your ends. So look at it like this: trimming your ends on a 3 to 4 month cycle or whatever works for you, but something that's consistent is more like a preventative maintenance solution. You want to prevent the damage before it happens, and I find that stretching your trims over long periods, over a long duration, can lead to a reactive trim, and usually a reactive trim results in hacking off like 3 to 4 inches, and that's what happened to me. So I don't want that to happen to you guys, but I've learned from it, and I just want to share with you guys what has helped me and do's and don'ts. In terms of a do, just please keep on track with your trims. I know your hair looks long and you love the length, but honestly, it's going to do more damage in the end. It's just going to start to split and wither away at your ends, and it's going to start to look see-through, and that's not aesthetically pleasing, and it's not healthy for your ends because the damage will just continue to move further up. Just be proactive, get your trims on a regular schedule, and you'll notice your ends will reap the benefits and your hair will thank you for it. Alright, so next up is low manipulation, and not manipulating your hair on a daily, weekly basis is so important in terms of retaining length. So low manipulation is a huge category, and a lot of things can fall under that. For example, minimizing heat and not using, harsh tools on your hair, using a wide tooth comb, etc. But in terms of styling, it really helps to preserve the protein in the hair. It helps to preserve the integrity of your strands. It really helps to lock in moisture because you're not using heat. Heat can really deplete the hair of its moisture, so keep that in mind. Low manipulation is so important, especially if you're trying to retain length, and it gives you another option of styling where styling is concerned. So you can do a braid out, you can do a twist out, a flexi rod, a perm rod. The options are endless and the styles are beautiful, and you'll enjoy your hair at the same time. Alright, so last but not least, minimizing direct heat. And we just talked about low manipulation hairstyles, which basically require little to no heat at all, and if it is using heat, it's indirect heat. But minimizing heat is crucial, especially if you're trying to get from one length to the next. After you've reached your goal, you can play around with heat a little bit, but just moderation is always key in this category. So I flat iron my hair maybe 4 to 5 times a year, and that's typically on a relaxer day or during that week. So not only does using heat like flat irons, blow dryers, curl ones, not only does it deplete the moisture levels in the hair, but it also compromises the integrity and the proteins in the hair. So it's really important to lay off the heat, especially if you're trying to get from one goal to the next. So making that small sacrifice to lay off the heat, and just minimize it or completely eliminate it from your regimen for a short amount of time will really help in terms of retaining length. I've done it and I still kind of do it to this day, and honestly I've seen a huge difference in my length retention. So keep heat to a minimum, opt for low manipulation hairstyles, and you'll see a difference in your ends. So in addition to the tips that I've just mentioned, there's also other hair care habits that I think are beneficial in terms of retaining length. So a tip would be detangling your hair from the ends up, using a wide tooth comb to comb your hair rather than a fine tooth comb. Wide tooth comb is much more gentle on your strands, it won't incur breakage on your ends, and overall it's just healthier for your hair. Using your fingers to detangle is huge. I still do that to this day, and I find that I'm able to sift through my knots and tangles easier just with my fingers rather than using a comb, because you can't really feel the tension that you're applying. So using the baggie method on your hair is a great dry hair solution. I use the baggie like all the time, especially underneath my wigs. That way my hair wouldn't dry out. But if you're experiencing excessive dryness, you know, moisturize your hair, seal your hair, use a baggie, like a plastic bag, a shower cap, cover your hair overnight or for a couple of hours. You'll notice that your hair will feel rehydrated, it will feel moisturized, and that will lead to longer lengths. Also, drying your hair with a t-shirt rather than a towel, it's a game changer. I'm not going back to towels. Like, I'm not doing it. I've been t-shirt drying my hair for years now, and honestly, it's the best thing. It's so much more gentle on the hair. It doesn't rough up the cuticles, which can then cause tangling, which can then lead to breakage. So using a t-shirt is the way to go. So yeah, guys, that's basically it. All these tips I've implemented and still use to this day. Everything that I've mentioned is basically my regimen now. I swear by them, and they've helped me go from damaged shoulder length hair to mid-back length hair in 3 years. But also remember, retaining length and growing long hair takes patience, it takes time, and it takes consistency. So having good techniques and methods, as I mentioned in this video, and coupled with great products and using it in the correct way will definitely get you to your goal length, definitely help you to retain length and have nice, healthier hair. Also check out my blog, hairliciousinc.com. I have a length retention guide on there and also other length retention tips as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.